Welcome everybody. So we're gonna listen to a presentation tonight on growing rhubarb by Ann Mason. We do have 3 people helping out, and then we have some Zoom help. Just a little kind of agenda. We're gonna do the presentation followed up by a question and answer, and then we have some questions sent in, so we'll go over those. And then please stay on mute unless you have a question. You can use the chat box feature and type into that. And directly either ask me the question directly or just put it for everybody. And the meeting is being recorded. And if you want to go ahead and take over.
Okay, thanks. Okay, you should be seeing my screen now. Okay, very good. I'm Ann Mason, and I am with the Virginia Cooperative Extension Master Gardener Program. I'm in the Fairfax County Master Gardeners, and tonight we will be talking about growing rhubarb, one of my favorite things to do, because it's so easy. It really is a non-fussy thing. I need to get over to, there it is. Okay, rhubarb is a herbaceous perennial, and it's a member of the buckwheat family, along with a lot of other plants. It's a cool season crop, which means that it grows in cool seasons. This is important because it also grows really well in Alaska and Washington and Oregon. It does grow well in our climate, and we're going to talk about that tonight. It has heart-shaped leaves, as you can see in this image, and the reason why people grow this fruit or vegetable, depending upon which way you want to look at it, is because of its thick greenish, reddish stalks. In botany terms, these are called the petioles. Most of us just recognize them as leaf stalks. Rhubarb has a crown with rhizomes, which means that the leaf stalks come out of a crown and come up out of the ground, out of that crown. It also has deep roots. Now, people may think that rhubarb is a fairly recent to our shores, but it really isn't. One of the foremost botanists of his day, John Bartram, introduced rhubarb in Philadelphia in the 1820s. And he was sent seeds from another famous botanist, John Collingston, from England. Now, fast forward a few more years, the rhubarb was a very popular dish in Queen Victoria's time. And because of that, those of us who have English heritage or Great Britain heritage have had immigrants who imported rhubarb with them so they could enjoy it here. One of the things I do want to say is that rhubarb leaves and roots are a toxicant. That means that they're not good for humans to eat, and they're not good for animals to eat. Being a biologist with a chemist background, I just love formulas, and so those of you who have a similar background will recognize that this is a dicarbolic acid, which with the double bond O and the OH, which means that this is a very active ingredient. So it binds to a lot of other proteins in the body, which is why it's toxic. Now, growing rhubarb, the ideal site is in a sunny location, but it's okay in our climate because of our hot summers. It's okay to have afternoon shade. What's more important is that it likes well-drained, loomy soil with a slightly acid pH. But it will adapt to our clay soils. It does not adapt to sand. So therefore, that becomes really important. And it also is more important than the sun, is it does not tolerate any waterlogged soils. So if you have soils that don't drain well, this is not the place for a rhubarb plant. It thrives with high organic matter. So every year, people who grow rhubarb apply, compost or old manure or a degraded organic matter in the fall around the crowns of the plant. And especially those of us who like growing it apply a manure mulch around the crowns of the plant. The plant just seems to thrive on this high organic material. Otherwise, it's relatively easy to grow. So how do you plant a rhubarb? Because it grows with a crown, you plant the crowns in the early spring in holes that are 4 to 8 inches deep, depending upon the rhizomes and the roots that you have around that crown. You place the crown with the bud, just coming out buds of the rhubarb, about 1 or 2 inches below the soil surface. And watering, you can delay it. You can water right away, or you can delay it a day or two to let the rhubarb harden. It's fine. Once you've planted it, generally many people put straw as a mulch over the crown just to help conserve water. What's important when you first plant rhubarb is to let the roots grow. That means don't harvest any of the stems in the first year. What's important is to keep the area weed-free. Now you want to weed in a shallow way, so you don't want to go down with your trowel and pull up, because you may damage the roots. So you want to just wait for rain and just pull up the roots that you have there, including any adventurous trees that happen to like that same area. Why it's important to remove the weeds is because wild dock, which I don't know about you gardeners, but in my yard, it just seems to flourish. But that's a source of a beetle, the Rhubarb curicuro, which is a snout beetle pictured over in the right bottom, which likes to burrow into the stems. And when it burrows into the stems, it just takes that whole stem and it's no good, so you just cut it off. Now, rhubarb itself is relatively easy to grow. I just let it go. It's really pest-free other than that rhubarb beetle. And it has a delightfully mounding habit. In fact, I've seen it in people's front yards. It's really a nice looking plant. So buds emerge from the crown, as we talked about. It's slow spreading. It's long-lived. I've had mine in the ground for 30 years. And I do nothing with it other than to mulch it once a year. And it's very low maintenance. The one thing I do is when I notice that there are flower stalks, which are in the picture on the right, they're the tall stems with the look like flowers and seeds on the top, cut them off. If you're still harvesting stems, you don't want it to flower and you don't want it to send out the stalk. You'll see when the crown starts to multiply, and it's okay every 5 years or so to take your crowns and move them so that you have more plants. This is where you give some away to your neighbors or to your family. But it helps to keep the vigor of the plant if you divide it once every 5 to 8 years. Now, one of the things with rhubarb, it's a herbaceous plant. It will die at first frost. Remove all the vegetation. Do not be inclined to eat any of the vegetation, any of the stalks that have been frost has hit, because the oxalic acid that is in the leaf as all plants migrate their phloem and the water and the energy that's stored in the leaves down to the roots in the fall, rhubarb is not an exception to that. It does that too. So all the oxalic acid that are in the leaves migrate down. So after frost, do not harvest any of the stems. Rhubarb likes to have chill time, so it will be productive in the next year. And I was interested to know that the scientists have actually quantified it. They need a minimum of 500 hours of winter temperatures between 28 and 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Let the first, in the spring, April, May, it starts to flower out. Let those leaves fully emerge before you have any temptation to harvest the stems. I mentioned before, don't harvest the first year. The stems need to just let the roots grow. So in the first year of your plant, just look, tender it, but don't harvest any of the stems. When you do harvest stems, harvest 2/3 of them at a time, no more than that. Rhubarb will continue to be productive over a period of 6 to 10 weeks. So you can have continual pulling of your stems during that time period. So don't take all of your stems all at once. Now, why do we like rhubarb? At home, when I was growing up, my dad had a huge plot of rhubarb. And we know it as the pie plant. The stems are edible. You can eat them raw or you can eat them cooked. They are tart. We use rhubarb in pie, sauces, cobblers, salsa, and many, many more things. If you look on the internet, you'll see a great deal of recipes with rhubarb in them. Our favorite is with strawberries. I couldn't help but to provide to you a little bit of a recipe for what I'm calling Anne's rhubarb sauce. There's no quantities here because I don't cook by quantities. I just throw things in a pot. So first, cut your stalk off, cut your leaves off, and wash the stalk well. Because it's growing in the plant, you may have soil and other detritus. I cut the stalks into 2-inch pieces, more or less. Other people do different sizes. I put it in a saucepan with a little bit of water and I cook it down so that it starts to be soft. After it's soft, I then take clean, hulled, quartered strawberries of about an equal amount. I put them in the saucepan too. We don't like a lot of sugar, so it's really sugar to taste. And we put a little bit of sugar in, but the important thing is to not overcook it to a mush unless that's your intention. And then we like it cooled and served over vanilla ice cream, over pancakes, basically over anything, waffles, anything that you have that could use a sauce. So I would just wish you bon appetit with rhubarb. And here are some resources for your enjoyment. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Nothing. She just did such a great job. Oh, Brad has one.
I have a question. Okay, so you said you can divide them in fall and spring every 5 to 8 years. What if you need to move them? When do you do it? And can they also grow in a container okay?
I would move them whenever you needed to. I just divided my rhubarb plant because I stepped on it. And so I broke the crown. I broke one of the plants, so I just picked it up and moved it. And to my surprise, it's growing robustly. And that's in the middle of all this heat. I think what's more important is to make sure that it goes into well-drained soil in the proper sunlight, and that's more important than the time of the year that it's planted correctly. You don't want to plant it deep. You want to plant it, as I mentioned, because the crown needs to be able to get out. And what was the other part of your question, Brad?
Can you grow it in a container?
I've never tried that, so I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it has deep roots, but it depends upon how big your container is. I mean, I suppose if you have, I don't think the roots are very, very deep. So if you had a container, like a tomato container, where you would have, 12 inches of soil and the equal amount of width, I think that you should probably be okay, but I don't know for sure.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.